In extreme ownership, you talk about being close with the team, but not so close that they forget who's in charge or that the good of the team suffers. How do you overcome the isolation of leadership? What strategies did or do you employ to avoid the isolation becoming an issue? This is an example of, I'm going to take this to the extreme. Hey, I'm not going to be too close to my people. Guess what? I'm not talking to them, right? I'm not going to speak to them. I got to maintain a distance. And it's obviously not true. It's obviously not true. And I think, you know, the relationship that you and me and Seth and that we all had was clearly this, right? I wasn't alone. I wasn't isolated as the leader because we were all bros and hanging out. And now, did it start off like that? No. You know, as we always talk about, like, I come across a Hackworth style of like, hey, we're not going to joke around for at least whatever 6 to 8 weeks to make sure that these dudes are good to go and that they understand where I'm coming from, and that's cool. But once we get through that, okay, like, then it's like open up a little bit. Then it's like open up a little bit more. And then it's open up a little bit more so that you're not isolated at the top. Because not only is it important that you're not isolated, that's like a marginal thing. What's more important is what I talked about earlier is if Leif can't come to me and say, hey man, hey, I don't agree with this plan. Or more importantly, hey Jocko, here's what's going on with the troops right now. Here's what's going on with the mentality. Here's what's going on with the morale. If he can't knock on my door and say that to me, then that's a real problem, because now I'm in the dark on what's happening inside with the troops, which is problematic.
Yeah, I think this to me sounds like I was thinking about this question, and it sounds to me like maybe a junior leader that was promoted up the chain, because that's where you really feel like when I go from, you know, the assistant platoon commander where I'm like kind of one of the boys, and I'm, you know, we can, you know, it's kind of I can kind of play interference with the officer in charge and the platoon commander. Now all of a sudden I get promoted. You recognize instantly there's a little bit of difference. You've got to maybe kind of distance yourself slightly from where you were previously and recognize.
When you took over Charlie Platoon as the platoon commander, when did you realize that you needed to transition from being one of the boys until being the OIC, and that the gap was going to open up a little bit? Was it as soon as you took over?
It was pretty quick, because I'd been to BUDS and SEAL qualification training, you know, SQTR advanced training with several guys, and I knew these guys very well. And you know, I think we had a big house party, hanging out, you know, having a good time, and everybody's over at my house, and all of a sudden I realized something I did all the time, you know, as an assistant platoon commander, and all of a sudden we're in at work, you know, the next week, and I got to make some tough calls, and we got to get, you know, drive the standards a little bit higher where we're at, and there's some pushback. And you realize, like, okay, when it's time to give people some bad news or say, hey, we're not doing as good as we should, we need to fix that, and they kind of give you the like, hey, bro, you know, what are you doing Friday? You know, then you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to distance a little bit. But the isolation, you should never be isolated. And I think that's one thing that, you know, I remember coming into your office, and I'd come in and hang out all the time in your office. You know, you'd come in and hang out in the platoon space. I mean, I'd come, you know, we'd see each other in the gym. We were always trying to find a way to like hang out and talk, and it was even when, you know, Seth's home was all the way across the other side of the city. I mean, we'd still connect with him and talk to him on the phone every once in a while.
Yeah, well, I talked to him all the time on the ANDVT.
Yeah, you guys talk regularly, yeah. but even me, you know, we'd always, when he came by, like we'd always try to get together and talk to each other and catch up, whether it was in the chow hall or you know, in the platoon space. And you know, guys like, I remember Tony would come in there. I'd come in, I'd walk in, and I'd see the win plan written up on Jocko's whiteboard in Task Unit Bruiser, where Tony had written down all the things that we needed to do to win in Ramadi.
Which were pretty harsh.
Yes.
True, but
probably on the level like Genghis Khan would certainly have approved.
There was the Genghis Khan win plan, which, you know, well, hey man, but that has its merits.
We were joking and laughing about that. This is the relationship Jocko had, you know, not only with me but with other leaders in the task unit, and I think you have to have that. I mean, you've got to have a relationship with your people. You can't think that I can't talk to anyone, I can't interact with anyone. I think you're going to be unsuccessful as a leader, you know, if you try to roll that way. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, I think where you might feel what might feel like a isolation, which is definitely true, and this is the burden of command, right? Like, guess what? You're friends with Leif, you're friends with Seth, you're friends with Tony, you're friends with these guys, but at the same time, like, oh, the burden of command is on you, and it's gonna be you. You're gonna bear that, right? In your platoon, it's like, hey, you got your assistant platoon commanders, you got your platoon chief, you got your LPO, but when something goes wrong, if something happens on a mission that goes bad, I'm not looking at the assistant platoon commander. I'm looking at you. That's the burden of command. There's one man that stands on the carpet, right? That's the way it works. And sometimes being one man, that's a little bit of an isolating feeling.
To help you understand, our leading petty officer in Charlie Platoon, awesome, amazing SEAL.
Yeah.
Love the guy, and hopefully he can be on here one of these days after his Navy career, his retirement comes one of these days. But he was. I remember we were up in Nevada training, and we took a couple days to go snowboarding, which was an awesome, good deal. And he we're in the van. He looks around. He sees me. He's like, I'm not the senior guy in charge. And so he's screaming and laughing about how awesome it is to not be the senior guy, because he knows the burden of command is now with me and not with him. If guys get in trouble or do something stupid they shouldn't have done.
Yeah. Which is, while you're in Tahoe, guys getting in trouble and doing stuff stupid is probably a fairly likely thing to have happen.
Highly probable.
That's one of my favorite trips that I did multiple times. Yeah, so that's it, man. Build relationships, and at the same time, when you're in charge, and there's a little bit of that's called the burden of command. Embrace it.